TopMedTalk. Monty Mythen here. As we prepare to move into the next phase of the COVID crisis, we're going to be widening our focus here on TopMedTalk. We will continue to deliver COVID-specific programs, but we all have a huge additional responsibility as we try to reboot normal services. So although this piece is not directly related to COVID-19, we believe it's information that is crucial to the bigger task of rebuilding the healthcare system as we learn to adapt and live with this new virus. Thank you to our sponsors and to you, our listeners, for helping us to share this important information.
Well, hello, I'm Desiree Chappell, and this is TopMedTalk. We are coming to you live from the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists 2019 Annual Congress in Chicago, Illinois. AANA 2019 is a gathering of over 3,000 certified registered nurse anesthetists, or CRNAs, for the largest networking educational event in nurse anesthesia. Now, I'm joined by my co-host and editor-in-chief, Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty. How are you?
Hey, Desiree. I'm good.
Good.
Very good.
It's been a great couple days so far.
Yeah, it has. It has not only great education here, but I'm learning more about Chicago every time I come.
You love Chicago, I know.
I do.
Well, we've had the opportunity to sit down with some amazing speakers and guests on TopMedTalk over the last day and a half. We've talked about a range of topics, diversity. We talked about caring for transgender patients, and we talked to innovation inventors within the CRNA community and anesthesia community. We talked to some military guys from the Navy and the Army that wrote
best
a paper.
Best dressed people at the meeting.
They are best dressed. Yeah, definitely. I liked both of them.
Yeah,
but
can't compete really.
Yeah. Well, now we have the opportunity to sit down with two, I really feel like thought leaders within the AANA community. Our topic for discussion, we're going to be talking mentorship and diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And we have Lena Gould, a CRNA, and JBing, a CRNA. And guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you taking time to sit down and chat with us on TopMedTalk. I'm sure a lot of people know your names, both of you, because you're really active within the AANA community. So, Lena, can you give me a little bit more about your background and a little bit more about yourself?
Okay. Again, I'm the founder of the Diversity Nurse Anesthesia Mentorship Program. It started in 2003 as a poster project. When I was a nurse anesthesia student at LaSalle University, I had, as a poster project, we were assigned any topic related to anesthesia. But what I found was that we had a shared curriculum with 4 other programs in Philadelphia that included Penn, LaSalle, Villanova, and St. Joe's University, and we would go to each other's schools and find out the anesthesia topic that was being taught by all-white faculty at these different universities. And also, I had witnessed a minority student at Philadelphia program, and so there, I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper and find out about diversity. So I had to, within the profession, so I had to get in touch with someone from the AANA to find out what the composition was like, and I didn't know that. So what I did was I pulled the each of the cohorts that we were sharing the curriculum with, and basically the bar graph or the information from the Philadelphia cohorts and the actual profession itself mirrored each other. Mm-hmm. So, and that's when I found that the CRNA community was very well underserved. Mm-hmm. So, and from then on, after that, I had shared that information. I'm not sure if you know Dr. Art Swirling. Mm-hmm. He used to be the program director at University of Penn. And he was one of our instructors. He was teaching us about regional anesthesia. And after that, I approached him and told him about my poster. And he's the one that encouraged me to go to the AANA meeting in Boston. Oh. And that's where I met Goldie Bragman, the past president of the AANA. She was the first and only black CRNA that became president. And that's when I found out at that moment, by meeting her, that this was going to be my calling. Yeah. After that, and that was as a student.
Oh man, that is a fantastic story. Mm-hmm. Well, I know you're very active within the AANA community and speak out, about making sure that we are a diverse group and that we're aware and inclusive within our community. I was going to give a shout out on your Twitter handle as Diversity CRNA.
Yes.
And I think that is that's just fantastic.
Yes.
And it really encapsulates who you are and what your mission is for sure. Mm-hmm. So, John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience experience within the AANA diversity and inclusion?
Well, I came on board with Lena probably in 2029 or so. Mm-hmm. And I work at the Washington, D.C. area. I've worked at, and I always tell people, I've worked at about 12 hospitals, 34 surgery centers, about 30 offices. So, I have worked around. So I've seen a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And when I came through the nurse anesthesia school, I was the Jackie Robinson. I was the only black in my class down at George Washington University. And so I've known about this long before Lena was doing it. But I've always encouraged people to try to better themselves. So Martin King talks about, what have you done for other people? And so before this emotional intelligence stuff came out about me versus we've been doing that. Mm-hmm. And it was a perfect marriage. When I met her, I said, well, I could do it on a bigger level. And so I've always kind of made sure that if one gets in, it's no good unless you bring other people in. And so this was... Little did I know, this was kind of my mission, too, in life, but it was more structured and formalized during the diversity program. Mm-hmm. And so we go around and, we have mentorship programs throughout the country. And many of the things I've done, because I'm a capitalist, okay? Many things I've done because our association or people of color need to see someone up there that represents them. Because if you're not at the table, then, of course, they say you become part of the meal, whatever that means. And so, and I think that it's my duty to make sure that I champion other black male diversity people, and also, Latins, Hispanics, and Asians alike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is the AANA? I mean, I know that we have the program for the diversity in nurse anesthesia mentorship. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So since the poster in 2007, because I was giving out a lot of information to diverse nurses that wanted to find out about the admission process, the rigors of the programs, they wanted to find out a little bit more before they applied. So I was able to have meetings, private meetings in our home, in my home. And then later on, I approached Betty Walgus from Villanova University. This is after I became a CRNA. If we can use her a classroom setting, because my house, I had a small house, and we couldn't accommodate all the nurses. And this was all by word of mouth, no social media. And so she said yes, and we did that. And then come to find out, the nurses that were coming in the area were not just Philadelphia; they were coming from New York, Maryland, D.C. Mm-hmm. So we were able to give that talk to them about what they needed to do in order to prepare before they go into a nurse anesthesia program. But at that time, it was just newly credentialed CRNAs speaking to nurses of color that were interested in nurse anesthesia. It wasn't until 2 years later that's when I got in touch with, and this is before I met JBing, I got in touch with Terry Wicks. At the time, he was president of the AANA, and I just simply emailed him and said that I'm having an event at Pennsylvania Hospital that was affiliated with University of Penn, Dr. Art Swirling's program, and I asked him if he can come to speak to the nurses that was interested in nurse anesthesia and if he can talk about advocacy. Well, less than 2 hours later, he emailed me back and responded and said, yes, of course, and the AANA was going to pay for that. I just simply asked, yep. And he actually responded, and he did come. At that moment, we only had one program director, and it was Art Swirling, and we had the AANA leadership, the president that came, and he spoke about the advocacy, like I said. And then separately, on a separate date, a couple months later, I would have an airway workshop at my facility because I was chief CRNA at that time, and we would have it on a Sunday. So they were coming at two different events, the information session, and then it was the hands-on. Well, since that time, when John joined at 2009, and in 2010, that's when we combined it so that no longer we had separate dates. They're weekend events now, information sessions and the airway sessions. So now we have 4 to 5 program directors that will come and do a presentation about their programs. We'll have CRNAs from diverse backgrounds, whether they're military CRNA, educators, someone that own their own anesthesia services, someone that's newly credentialed CRNA, and everyone would talk about their different background, and those that have their doctorates too, because that's important because a lot of the programs now are converting to the doctorate program. And then the last panelists are the SRNAs, the nurse anesthesia students from different programs, and a lot of them have some are single, some are married with children, some are single with children. So like, how do you balance, going to school with that? And then they have the hands-on. Then the very next day for the airway workshop. So that allows them to now write in their personal statement that not only did they meet the bare minimum as far as getting in and shadowing a CRNA, but they actually came to the event. But what's very important now, from that time when John had joined up until now, we've done 44 diversity CRNA information sessions, but we've always had, since Terry Wicks was the first one that from the AANA leadership to come. AANA leadership, whether it's the CEO of the AANA, whether it's the past presidents of the AANA, senior leadership from MBCRNA, senior leadership from the COA, that actually came to speak to all the nurses that were interested in nurse anesthesia, because they need to know about the advocacy side as well, not just I want to become a nurse anesthetist and give and deliver anesthesia, because we're both active within our own state association and the national. So I think that's very important. But since that time, over 510 nurses of color got accepted into 68 graduate nurse anesthesia programs. So we're proud of that.
Absolutely. You should be very proud of that.
Yeah.
Wow, that is fantastic. John, what are some of the messages that you talk about in some of these advocacy and leadership?
Well, the biggest question that you always ask people is why? Why are we doing this? So again, it's 1% African Americans are in nurse anesthesia, and 10% of people of color in nurse anesthesia. So it's a big void. It's one of the most, as much as we don't want to talk about segregation, it's one of the most segregated professions out here, but it's a great profession. And so I think many times mentoring is just a fancy word for saying, I need help. And what we're saying is that we'll give you a blueprint, and we'll navigate you through this maze. You come to this session 3 times, and we have by far the best way to get to nurse anesthesia school, whether you're anyone of color or whites, blacks, whatever. Diversity, they think is only for people of color, but this is for everyone. And so now we have about 20% whites and, the people of color, and I think it works. And what I tell these kids this right here is that if you just listen to us and you allow us to guide you, because the most important thing about not having adequate representation is fear.
Yeah.
Now, if you live in a neighborhood, you have upper-level people. They'll know about nurse anesthesia, but people that are not of means, they may not ever hear or see anyone that looks like you. And I think most minorities are we're vision-oriented. We need to see somebody looks like me. And that's the reason that successful operations will always have diverse population, because they have money too. And if you're, again, I'm a capitalist, and they say, if they can bring money to the table, then of course we can infuse them into the greater picture.
Could you expand, please, Andrea? I predominantly work in the United Kingdom, so sometimes we look through these things with a different lens, but I was on faculty at Duke in North Carolina. Right. Do you think the stats you described about the mix of people getting into various different professions was lack of equal opportunity or lack of confidence, or a bit of both?
Well, a little bit of both.
Okay.
Equal opportunities mean you know nothing about it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's funny. Short story. I'm with the University of Maryland, and it was one lady that tried to get into nursing, and who was the first African American Supreme Court justice? That was
Thurgood Marshall.
Thurgood Marshall.
And I'm like,
and Thurgood Marshall had to get her into University of Maryland. Now, this lady is 97 years old, so she applied to nurse anesthesia school. Application went in. She gets there. And they didn't know she was African American. They said, you have glasses, you can't get in. So it's 1954, 1956, 1960. So many times it's a matter of, we have a history of America that, we're exclusion, not an inclusion like we are right now. So you have to fight through those barriers. But that doesn't leave because the Voting Rights Act was passed and other things were passed. It's still the visual of saying, I've never seen anyone look like you, talk like you, and never had one at the head of the bed. People always ask me, where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
That's not a good question to ask before you go to sleep.
I know.
So those are some barriers that we have. And again, only 10% of males are in nurse anesthesia. No, I'm sorry, 10% of males are in nursing.
Yes.
And then if you extrapolate that down to how many African Americans are in nurse anesthesia males, then the numbers are very, 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 very small. So what we've done is make this something that, not only can I, the reason I got nursing is two things. I said I was 19 years old, was girls, and you can make some money, because most males, especially African-American males, they're not interested in being a nurse. Who wants to be a nurse? Because that when I was in school,
the perception of it.
Perception, I never told people I was a nurse. I said I was a healthcare practitioner.
There you go.
Anyway.
So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and we're going to have Debra Diaz join us here in just a moment, is what the AANA is really doing right now to help promote diversity and inclusion within our organization. And we have Debra Diaz. Thank you so much for joining us, Debra. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so
Good.
much for having this forum for us to be able to discuss this subject.
Yeah. Well, Debra, you are a CRNA, and you're on the AANA Board of Directors. You're a regional director, correct?
That's correct. Region 7.
And you're also on the AANA Diversity and Inclusion Committee as well.
Yes, and I'm very proud of that.
Yes, so as you well should be, for sure. Well, one of the questions I was getting ready to ask is, what is the AANA? I know we have this committee, but what does that mean, and what are we doing as an organization really to, walk the walk of being a diverse organization and inclusive of all?
One of the things that we are doing is, first of all, we are promoting a whole series of lecture. And, I would be remiss if I first didn't thank Dr. Gould and Mr. Bing and say that they are the forefather and mother of walking us through this.
Yeah.
I am very sensitive to the topic, being the first Latinx student at the nurse anesthesia school that I went to, which is Medical University of South Carolina. So having diverse backgrounds and people of color on the board, I believe brings a perspective that maybe we haven't had before. And I know that we look at it from a lens of what we have experienced ourselves.
Right.
And so I have to give a shout out to Sonia Moore, who's also a region director, and she, like I am, a woman of color. Yes. I'm caught between two races, two cultures, and so we constantly have that in our forebrain, and so we always try to look at it from that lens.
Yeah. Well, and so what are some of the initiatives that the AANA are doing? Is there anything specific within the coming year that we should look out for? You mentioned doing some lectures, I guess, at our annual meeting and different congresses. Anything?
And that's what we do, is we have a whole lecture series of diversity and inclusion. And this morning, the Goldie Brangman lecture was on how do we take care of people from the Muslim religion. We make sure that everything that we do has a lens of looking at it from equity as well. We're always bringing that to the forefront. And then also we try, I know that we as the board of directors want to be more involved in for example, the Black and White Affair, and also participating in those wonderful workshops that
they've been doing.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. Well, personally, one of the things that I've noted, especially at this Congress and in a lot of mailings and our bulletin and journals and things like that, the pictures that we're using are diverse. And Lena, I think someone said during the open ceremonies, or someone had told me that, you had mentioned at one point, you just want to see, like to John's point, you just want to see people that look like you that are representing what you're doing. And I think that is so important because, and I mean, I'm a woman. I'm well represented though within our community, but I still feel like we all have our things, and we do want to be represented, and we do want to have a voice for everyone and be very inclusive. I mean, is that something that came out of your all's initiative, the diversity of what we're seeing coming out of the AANA now?
Right. It's not just the AANA. I mean, we've also extended the pipeline as well.
Great.
So now we go to the HBCUs. I'm not sure if you heard of that term before. It's the historically black college universities and HSIs, the Hispanic Serving Institutions, schools of nursing. So we'll invite maybe 12 to 14 nurse anesthetists of color to come to their schools, because we found that the nursing students of color are not finding about nurse anesthesia profession during that time.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is, and I make a conscious effort to make sure that half of the CRNAs that attend are males, CRNAs of color, to come, because we have male nursing students that need to be mentored as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's how we get everyone involved. So we do have a relationship, again, with the AANA, but we also have a relationship with other CRNAs from across the country who's willing to mentor the future of nurse anesthesia, and those are the nursing students too. So we collaborate, we work together, because everyone, we just want to make sure that we have diverse communities at this point, after doing this for, 15 years now.
Absolutely.
And we just had a booth at the National Association of Hispanic Nurses, and it was such a delight to be able to, for me personally, I didn't even know nurse anesthetists existed. And I was raised in Miami, and it has a very vibrant and very robust Latinx community. And I had no idea that this was an option. I was in ICU for 16 years and before I went to anesthesia school. And so being able to tell all my Latin friends that this is an opportunity, we certainly have the talent there.
Absolutely.
We just need to know it exists.
Right.
And we compete just as well as any other group. But we just didn't know. And it's hard for certain people because it seems skewed, because in Miami and the South Florida area, just like California, there's so many Latin people there, but we're a very small percentage. I mean, Lena knows all of the percentages of our community.
Right.
And so I had no idea that we were only around 2% of the CRNA community.
Right.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, I mean, I applaud the three of you and everything that the AANA is doing, and the people that you guys work with, for all of your efforts, because we are better and stronger together, and when we're inclusive and bringing in everybody, all different backgrounds together. I mean, we grow so much more, I think, as a community when we do that. John, did you have something?
Let me say this, because I think that the elephant in the room is this. Because, I do think in chaos you can learn from that. So it's 2019.
Right.
It's 2019.
Yeah.
We should not be championing this. If you look at your landscape and you say, what is it that's not represented in America? You look out there and you don't see people of color. And so the people that should be championing this is not us, because we're just the people, they're always complaining. It should be people like you and other people, because that's where you get the traction.
Yeah.
And so have we had some difficulty? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is race a problem? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is the membership divided? Absolutely. And I think that we have to be, courage comes when you do things that are tough and not things that are easy. Yeah. And so, as much as we don't want to shove this down, and listen, I'm raising a hand for the same question all the time. I think the leadership has to say, there's a problem here, and we're going to. ESPN saw that, and they do well financially.
Yeah.
Good companies that have strategic planning and have the guts to say, we're going to take care of this.
Yeah, we need to make
you
change.
can't go to Orange Patch to look for apples.
Yeah.
So that's the reason we go to HBCUs.
Right. Yes.
We can't get them in. We got to get them in and get them out.
Yeah.
And then the psychosocial part with this. When we mentor students, I do the interviewing skills, because many students, black and white, they can text but they can't talk. So once they get an interview, I'll call them up and I try to deprogram them and help them to get in school. And then once they get in school, then the issue is that, do you go to a school where you're it all the time? And then, you have to deal with people in your community that in the hospital that may not want you there. Did you get in because of affirmative action? Was it quota system? So the psychosocial problem with nurse anesthesia students is very, very tough.
Yeah.
Not only are you working 18 hours a day, 3 years, which is just post-traumatic stress syndrome, but not war. But now you got to deal with the psychosocial problem. Yeah. So we try to bring that to there. And we try to bring that to the forefront. And Lena has see, I'm kind of Martin, and she's kind of Malcolm. She's kind of push it.
It works, though. It works.
So the whole Lena, you can't do that. So I try to make sure, Lena, that's good, but let's say it so they can eat it without the bitter taste. So we have a great association. We have a great synergy with this.
Yeah. Right.
And because you have to. Our end goal is how can we make this opportunity available to everyone, and with no barriers, landscape being the same. Referees say this is the way you get in and get out is the same as anyone else. Yeah. And that's why I want to make sure that we don't forget that point.
But if I can just add real quickly, initially when I was doing this, I wanted to change the face of nurse anesthesia. But as a result of doing this for 15 years now, the CRNAs of color that are graduating from the graduate nurse anesthesia programs, they're becoming chief CRNAs. They're becoming clinical coordinators. They're becoming military CRNAs. They're becoming PhD, DMP, doctorate prepared CRNAs. They're becoming owners of anesthesia services. So it was initially about changing the face of anesthesia, but now we're changing the culture.
Yes.
Of nurse anesthesia.
And I think probably
all of that took time.
Yeah, it did take time, but I think that's a natural progression that is, it's good. I mean, that's good for all of us.
Right.
And good for them. I mean, that mentoring program was so much more than just saying you're a person of color. Let's try and get you in.
Right.
This is mentoring you in leadership.
That's right.
And that is what we all need.
And it doesn't stop there. It stops afterwards because no one in your family's ever made this kind of money.
Right.
Now what do you do? Now you have options.
Yeah.
And so we talk to kids that are 10 years out because they've never been in a position of, like, I have my own business. How do you do this?
Yeah.
And so this is a continuum.
Yeah.
And I can assure you that when we have our board meetings, when we go into closed session, executive session, things that the membership at large doesn't see, we are constantly discussing how do we make this equitable for all?
Right.
How do we bring in more minorities? How do we make sure that the message is known? So where change does take time, and I mean, I'm old, so I've seen the changes in our population and in our country with before the civil rights movements and all of that political change that has occurred. It does take time, and we are, I think I can say from my perspective, we are making that change. Yeah. It is happening.
Right.
And I want everybody to be assured of the fact that the board is 100% behind this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's great. Well, guys, I could talk to you for a long time, and I hope I've done this conversation justice because it is so very important within our community and within healthcare in general. And so Lena, I wanted to congratulate you on the Agatha Hodgins Award, the outstanding achievement within the CRNA community, and all the work that all three of you have been doing. Thank you for that.
Yes.
And hopefully we can continue to move the needle and keep the conversation going.
Yes. So, thank you so very much.
Thank you, guys, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you.
TopMedTalk.
Desiree Chappell here. Just a quick reminder, subscribe to TopMedTalk. We're a daily source of news and conversation focused on perioperative care. We bring you all the latest talk from all the major conferences in the perioperative space. We can also be found on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and we now have a free mailing list with special offers and additional goodies for subscribers. Go check us out at TopMedTalk.com. That's www.topmedtalk.com.